This is the lecture for chapter 4 of the Odyssey. We pick up chapter 4 with Odysseus resuming his story, presumably after a short respite for food. Remember, everything that we've been hearing so far has been in a flashback. So here we see Odysseus telling about his visit with Aeolus, god of the winds. Now, although Zeus is a god of the heavens, he's imparted many of the duties to others. The Olympians believed in delegation. So the island of Aeolus floats along the ocean and is built like a fortress. Odysseus is granted an audience with King Aeolus and tells him everything he knows about the Trojan War for an entire month. Aeolus enjoys his story and his conversation enough that he actually offers his services to and speeds them on their way home to Ithaca. We see Aeolus coming and binding the north, east, and south wind in a bag, only allowing the west wind to blow Odysseus freely home. We have to remember the journey that Odysseus is on right now is a westward journey. So Odysseus carries the three winds with him all the time, doesn't allow anybody to look at the bag, to touch the bag. And after sailing for 9 days and nights, the crew can see the fireplaces and chimney of Ithaca on the horizon. They are so close to getting home. Odysseus, tired from the journey, having been fearful that somebody was going to do something, that something was going to go wrong, falls asleep with Ithaca in the distance. Now, I mean, that makes sense, right? 9 days and 9 nights of straight on sailing. Only for his men to do something stupid. While Odysseus is sleeping, his men begin to consider the fact that they're on their way home after 10 years, and they feel like they're returning home without any kind of reward. They become curious about this mysterious bag that Odysseus had always kept with him. Suspecting maybe that King Aeolus gave him gold or some kind of treasure, they sneak the bag away from the sleeping Odysseus and untie it, where all of the winds explode out of the bag with a hurricane-like force, blowing them straight from Ithaca back into the sea. This is a type of irony, right? We expect for these men so close to home, we expect for their journey to be ended, and suddenly it's not. Now, this storm blows the men literally right back where they started. Odysseus pleads with King Aeolus, can you help hook us up, man? I mean, you helped us once before. Can you do that again? And Aeolus sends him away. Wants him gone. There's an alliteration used, him whom heaven hates. What's going on here is Aeolus realizes that Odysseus's luck is so bad that it's non-normative. It's not normal. There must be gods against him. And Aeolus doesn't want to get involved with the politics on Mount Olympus. So Odysseus and his men sail for 6 more days until they reach the island Lammas, the home of the Lastrygonians. Now, all of Odysseus's ships kind of sail right into this natural harbor, but Odysseus, becoming a little bit more cautious on his journey home, pulls his ship aside and climbs up one of the cliffs to kind of scope out any potential issues that there might be. So we see him kind of changing as a character, right? No longer does he just wash ashore and get right to it, but he's growing, he's changing. Now, to his horror, the Lastrygonians, creatures as big as mountains, spring forth and destroy Odysseus's ships and eat his men, except for one, the ship that Odysseus had been on. So Odysseus immediately climbs down as fast as he can, and he gets his crew to row out with all of their strength. That night, they reach one of the Aegean Islands. Now, again, we want to be careful here, right? We just saw all of our men eaten, destroyed. So Odysseus goes by himself on this island to search for food and supplies. So Odysseus is now on his own, trying to keep his men protected. I do want to talk about this real quick, because this is quite sad. If you think that all of these men had been with Odysseus the entire time at war for 10 years, they're on their way home and they all get killed. Like, that's got to be gut-wrenching to Odysseus. So they're on a new island, and Odysseus is climbing to the top of one of the highest peaks of the island to, again, get a better view, just like he did at the island with the Lastrygonians. And here he spies a trail of smoke rising from the forest. Now, he wants to go figure out what's going on here, but he thinks maybe he should go with some dudes. He doesn't want to go by himself. Maybe he should go with some men, or even better yet, maybe he should send his men. And on his way back, he is blessed, he thinks, by the gods, sending a deer that he's able to slay and take back to the men for some dinner. So, back with the men, they split the men into two groups. Odysseus having one group, and his second in command, a man named Eurylochus, the other group. And they cast lots. They roll some dice. They, take a branch, they snap it in two, and they go, okay, if you get the big branch, you're going. If you get the small branch, you're staying. So they cast lots, and Eurylochus gets the short stick. He has to go. So he actually leaves with 22 men, all weeping. Odysseus's men all weeping. They're assuming, expecting that they are all going to their deaths. And they get to this place, which would be unusual. There's a palace of stone with lions and wolves, both like weird animals to be on an island together. And what's even more weird is these animals don't attack Eurylochus and his men, but they kind of wander about. So they are on this island, and rather than running away, which is, maybe a good idea in this case, right? This would not be a setting that we would be expecting. Despite being surprised, Eurylochus and his men go to withdraw into the palace. And they hear a woman singing. And they rush indoors to see her. So we might think, what is going to happen? Is this mood foreshadowing something? Are there things that maybe Odysseus's men are missing? And as Odysseus's men open the door, they meet Circe, a beautiful woman who invites them into her house. And all of the men except Eurylochus are suspicious about this. Eurylochus waits outside as all of the men walk inside. And as he's watching, he sees Circe give food and give drink. Now, it's astonishing to me that not all of the men were like this. Like, I get Eurylochus, right? After the Cyclops and the Trojan War and the Lastrygonians, I might be a little freaked out of this woman who is on an island by herself, as far as I can tell, living in a stone-cut palace with a whole bunch of wolves and lions about her. All of the men, except Eurylochus, go, nope, this is good, this is normal. She is smoking hot. Let's go in. And while the men are greedily eating, drinking, getting drunk, Circe reveals herself to be a sorceress, an enchantress, and turns all of the men into pigs. Her magic is being utilized by this wand or staff, as well as portions that have been mixed in with the wine. Now, although the men are transformed into pigs, they still hold on to all of their senses, thoughts, memories, feelings as men. Now, Cersei apparently, sees no distinction between their personalities and that of pigs, because, I guess some men are pigs. Sees no difference in them and pigs, and takes them outside to the pig pen. I do want to note we see some onomatopoeias here, but takes them out to the pig pen where she feeds them the acorns and scraps that would be reserved for the pigs. So now we realize all of those lions, wolves, maybe even that stag that Odysseus killed are all men. Now, I don't know how she chooses what animals to turn men into. Maybe the table manners and the type of men that these men were dictated that they were pigs. Maybe other men that were of good character were lions or wolves. But Eurylochus sees all of this. And he immediately hurries back to Odysseus to tell him what's happened and warn the Achaeans that they're in danger, right? This last band of Greek soldiers, they need to leave now. And Odysseus says, I cannot. Although Eurylochus, second in command, his first response is we should leave and save ourselves. Odysseus is like, no, I'm going to go rescue the crew. And as he approaches the house, Hermes, the messenger god, appears to him in the disguise of a young man and tells Odysseus there's no way that you will be able to free your men without my help. So he offers him Molly, a herb, which will afford him some sort of protection. Now, it's here that we start to see Odysseus's noble qualities, right? Eurylochus, the second in command, he wants to leave. Odysseus, I'm going to go forth. And maybe there's something about that has Hermes or some of the other gods maybe want to help, right? Hermes is the messenger god. Now, is Hermes helping him because Hermes wants to help him? Has Zeus commanded Hermes to help him? We don't really know, but it's very clear. Between Athena and Hermes, Odysseus is getting some serious juice help from the gods. So Odysseus is commanded to take the Molly as a talisman. It'll protect him. And Odysseus walks into Circe, who's weaving very seductively, by the way, inviting him in. Now, Odysseus, being a wise, cunning man, acts the part of a weary traveler and begs for something to drink, begs for some food. And Circe, in typical Greek cultural tradition, makes an offer. Come on in. I'll host. I'll help you out. Remember, this idea of hospitality is huge amongst the Greeks. Circe gives him food, gives him drink. Now again, this is ironic, right? We know that Odysseus knows that Circe is a magician that turned his men into pigs. Odysseus knows that Circe turned the men into pigs. Odysseus knows that Hermes has given him some help. Circe knows none of this. So we're able to see some of the dramatic irony, right? Circe is missing a lot of the information that we, the reader, have. So as she tries to seduce Odysseus, she attacks him, tries to turn him into a pig, and her magic does not work. Rather, Odysseus disarms her and holds her at sword point. Now this, rather than making Circe fearful or afraid, seems to kind of make her confused and intrigued. In fact, she realizes that she knows who this man must be. Hermes had once told her that a man named Odysseus would come visit on his way home from Troy. And we can assume that maybe she's even aware of the events of the Trojan War. Perhaps she's developed kind of a crush on Odysseus, right? A wise, smart, strong, good-looking hero. So she makes him an offer. He puts away his sword and follows her to bed that they may become friends. Now, that is not how I would make friends, but Odysseus initially refuses under one condition. She has to swear an oath to plot no further harm against him or his men. So she swears this by all the gods on Olympus, and Odysseus follows her to bed. Now, I thought Odysseus was on his way home because he missed his wife. Maybe that's just me. Tired from his many journeys and rescue missions, Odysseus takes some time to relax. Circe has her servants bathe him, and we kind of see this contrast. Odysseus sleeping with Circe, being waited on hand and foot, while his men are still pigs. Odysseus brings this up. He's like, man, I don't have a huge appetite right now. My men are still trapped. And I think he's employing kind of a cunning strategy here. He's actually getting it to where Circe wants to turn the men from pigs back into men, rather than straight up asking for it. And we see that. In fact, we see not only does she turn the pigs back into men, but she makes them younger, stronger, taller than they were before. I mean, that's not a bad deal. And then we see the men feasting, partaking of the drink, partaking of the food for an entire year. And after a year had passed, again, these are guys trying to get home, right? After a year had passed, the men finally begin to remind Odysseus that they should get home. No mention is made of Odysseus' wife or their own wives. Just, we want to get home. It's time we saw our house and native country. So Odysseus brings up their desire to home through some pillow talk, and kind of actually blames it on the men. He's like, my men, they keep griping and complaining, and they want to go home. And Circe's like, well, I was never holding you against your will, but I will tell you this. You have to go visit the house of Hades and Persephone before you go home. There's some information that you need. And I want to contrast this scene here for a second, because if you're keeping track of the timeline, Odysseus has been gone at least 11-ish plus years at this point of time. Plus, we know he was on the island for 7 years with Calypso, right? So we're at least 18 years. Meanwhile, his wife, raising Telemachus, running a kingdom, trying to keep the suitors at bay. So what kind of a hero, what kind of a man is Odysseus? The whole night, Circe tells him that he must consult the spirit of the blind prophet Tiresias, who can help guide him back home. And Odysseus is worried, obviously, about going to the underworld. Like, how do you do that? And Circe spends the night telling him how you do this safely to where you don't die going to the underworld. So the next morning, Odysseus, dressed in his armor, heroic, ready to go home, telling his men, you've wasted enough time partying, it's time to leave, let's go. And unfortunately, as the men have been partying hard for a whole year, Elpenor, a young man, the youngest of the men, was asleep, passed out drunk on the roof. And as everybody's getting ready to leave, he jumps up and actually fell off the roof and broke his neck and died. And he ended up going down to Hades, which, a little foreshadowing, right? Odysseus is going down to Hades, down to the underworld. So more than likely we could see Elpenor again. But it is sad to think Elpenor, surviving the 10 year of the Trojan War, surviving the Cyclops, surviving the Lastrygonians, survived being turned into a pig, dies of a hangover, falling off a roof. That's brutal. Now, before they leave, Odysseus tells his crew that they must first go to Hades. They must journey to the underworld. And the men respond not in bravery, but in sorrow and lament, anticipating they're never going to return home because the world of the dead does not let many return. And Odysseus basically tells them to suck it up, Buttercup. We got to go do this. So Circe blesses them, follows them to shore, and wishes them well on their journey, filling their sails with a wind that will speed them on the way to the dead. And it's interesting if you're thinking about the hero's journey that Odysseus is now venturing into the underworld, right? So that is the end of chapter 4. Up next, chapter 5.